I'll give you $7,000 if you address me in Neapolitan, laughed the mafia boss at the waitress. The jazz was a low thrum against the clink of silver, a nervous heartbeat under the skin of the restaurant. Harbor and hearth. It sounded cozy, like a fireplace. It was not. It was River North, Chicago, all exposed brick and amber lighting designed to make the wealthy look warm. I was a Lara Dimas, 23 years old, and my apron, stiff with starch, felt like armor. My feet ached, a dull throb that had started 2 hours ago and was now screaming. I moved, refilling water, clearing plates, smiling until my cheeks felt like concrete. The shift was grinding toward its end when the atmosphere curdled. It always did when Booth 12 was occupied. Marcello Benetti. The name was a whisper in the kitchen, a history lesson you did not want to learn firsthand, the Aurelio outfit. He was sitting with 3 other men, all in suits so expensive they seemed to absorb the light. They were quiet. Unlike the usual finance crowds, their stillness was more terrifying than any noise. I approached, my coffee pot an absurdly normal shield. Benetti looked up. His eyes were dark, and they did not just look at me. They assessed. He was handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like a panther resting. A small laugh, dry as paper, escaped him. It was not genuine amusement. It was the sound of someone testing the hinges on a cage. "I'll give you $7,000, he said. The jazz trio seemed to stutter. The clinking stopped. His voice was not loud, just perfectly pitched to cut through the room's hum. "If you address me in Neapolitan..." I froze. $7,000. It was more than I made in 6 months. It was enough to cover my grandfather's looming medical bills, to fix the rattling in my car. It was a joke. It was a test. I had no time to process the absurdity before chaos erupted from the other side of my section. "Hey, waitress over here!" Table 9, 3 men, deep in their 5th round of scotch, their ties loosened, their faces flushed. One of them, the loudest, snapped his fingers. "We need more, sweetheart, and a smile this time." I turned, forcing the practiced, non-committal expression onto my face. "Of course, sir. What can I get?" He grabbed my wrist. It was not a playful touch. It was ownership. His thumb pressed into the bones, his grip wet and hot. "I'm talking to you. Forget that table of stiffs. How about you bring us around on the house for having to look at your sour face all night?" Panic, cold and sharp, lanced up my arm. I tried to pull away, professionally. "Sir, please let go." "Or what?" he sneered, pulling me closer. The smell of his cologne and expensive liquor washed over me, choking. A shadow fell. I did not see Marcello Benetti move. He was suddenly just there, standing not by me, but by the edge of their table, 2 feet away. He had not touched anyone. He was just watching. He tilted his head, a gesture of mild curiosity. "She asked you to let go." The man at table 9, still holding my wrist, looked up, his booze-fueled confidence running headlong into a wall of absolute cold. "This ain't your business, pal." Marcello Benetti looked at the man's hand on my arm. Then he looked back at the man's eyes. He picked up an unused steak knife from their table, testing its weight in his palm. He did not point it. He just held it. "You," he said, his voice still quiet, "are disturbing the other diners, and you are putting your hands on an employee. In my place." He did not own harbor and hearth, but in that moment, he owned the air we were breathing. "I suggest," Marcello continued, "you pay your bill and leave. Now." The man holding me released my wrist as if it had suddenly burst into flames. He went pale, a sickly, mottled color. "No offense," he stammered, throwing a wad of cash onto the table. "We're leaving. We're going." The 3 of them scrambled out of the booth, knocking over a water glass. They were gone in less than 30 seconds, disappearing into the night. Marcello Benetti placed the steak knife perfectly parallel to the edge of the table. He turned back to me, the hint of that smile returning. The room exhaled. The jazz trio, realizing they had stopped playing, fumbled back into a weak melody. My wrist throbbed. I rubbed the red imprint of the man's fingers, my breath shaking. "Now," Marcello said, returning to his booth, "my offer, $7,000. I looked at him. The adrenaline was making me reckless. I was tired of being grabbed, of being threatened, of being perpetually behind on rent. I thought of the cooks in the back, Gianni and his crew from Naples, always yelling, always laughing. I had picked up fragments. I walked to his table. I did not smile. "Sette mila," I said, my pronunciation thick but clear. 7,000, I nodded. "Va bene." "All right." Then I used the phrase Gianni always used when the new dishwasher dropped a tray. "Ma stat a quart, but be careful." A flicker. The amusement in Marcello Benetti's eyes sharpened into genuine, sudden interest. The coldness receded, replaced by something I could not name: respect. He reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket. He did not pull out a wallet. He pulled out a stack of cash, held together by a simple black money clip, and placed it on my empty tray. It was a stack of $100 bills. It looked like far more than 7,000. "For the lesson in linguistics," he murmured. Before I could react, before I could touch the money, my manager, Greg, burst through the kitchen doors, his face the color of unblood cheese. He was vibrating with panic. "MOCD," he hissed to the bar. "They're here. They're coming in the front." "Metropolitan Organized Crime Directorate." The staff froze. This was not a health inspection. This was a raid. 2 men in suits that looked cheap and rumpled, but whose authority was sharp. Pushed past the hostess. "Restaurant's closed," one of them announced, flashing a badge. "Nobody leaves." Chaos. Greg was trying to talk to them, waving his hands. I saw the MOCD agents scanning the room, their eyes landing immediately on booth 12, on Marcello Benetti. Benetti, however, was calmly placing his napkin on the table. He looked bored. I needed to get the money off my tray. I needed to get off the floor. I backed toward the high-traffic service door that led to the dry storage. "Alara," Greg snapped, "help the bar clear the glasses. Look busy." I pushed open the door to the dry storage. I just needed 1 second. 1 second to hide this cash in my apron. The storeroom was dark, smelling of yeast and old cardboard. I almost tripped. Something was on the floor. A small, clear plastic baggie, zipped tight. It was full of white powder. My blood turned to ice. It was right by the door. It must have fallen. I flashed back to the finance bros at table 9, the way they fumbled when they fled. One of them had dropped it. And the MOCD was 2 feet away. I heard the heavy footsteps of one of the agents approaching the service station, talking to Greg. "We need to see your manifests for the last 2 weeks." He was going to come through this door. He was going to see the bag. We would be shut down. I would be implicated. I did not think. I could not bend down. I just kicked. My foot, clad in its worn-out black non-slip shoe, connected with the bag. It skidded across the linoleum, disappearing under the massive 50-pound bags of flour on the lowest shelf, vanishing into the darkness and dust. I pulled my foot back, my heart trying to escape my chest. The storeroom door was pushed open from the outside. It was not the agent. It was Marcello Benetti. He must have seen the whole thing from the angle of his booth, seen me find the bag, seen me kick it. He was holding the heavy door open, blocking the view from the dining room. He was on his way out, using the staff exit to the alley, clearly unbothered by the MOCD's command to stay. He looked at me, my tray still trembling, the pile of cash sitting innocently on it. His voice was a low murmur. Just for me, beneath the sound of the agents tearing the bar apart. "You don't owe anyone tonight. Alara." My breath hitched. He knew my name. "Not them." He nodded toward the MOCD. "Not him." A glance toward Greg. "Not even me." He held my gaze. "Unless you want to." He stepped back, holding the door for me to pass into the alley first, like a gentleman. I stepped out, the cold, damp Chicago air hitting my face. The $7,000 felt like a lead weight in my apron. The alley was dark, smelling of wet garbage and the river. Then I heard it, Not the MOCD, not the Chicago PD. A different siren, a sharp, European-style wail that meant federal. A black sedan and a matching black SUV, both with dark-tinted glass and government plates, screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley, blocking the street and my exit. Men in dark windbreakers spilled out. The letters on their backs were stark white, illuminated by the flashing lights BFI. Bureau of Financial Integrity? My stomach dropped. This was not about organized crime. This was about money. But I was not looking at the agents. I was looking at the SUV. The black SUV. The one that had been parked across the street from my apartment building for the last 9 days. The one I had convinced myself was just a coincidence. Just paranoia. I knew the license plate by heart. I must have stopped breathing. I must have made some small sound. Marcello, who had been about to walk past me into the night, stopped. He was not looking at the BFI agents. He was looking at my face. He followed my gaze, fixed, horrified, on the SUV's license plate. I saw his expression change in the flashing red and blue lights. The detached amusement was gone. The casual interest had evaporated. He was looking at me, Elara Dimas, the 23-year-old waitress, and he was seeing something else. He was seeing someone who recognized a federal surveillance vehicle. He realized, in that instant, that I was not just a girl who knew a few words of Neapolitan. I was not just a witness to his power play. I was prey, and the hunters were already here. His entire posture shifted. He took one slight step, not away, but toward me, positioning his body half a pace in front of mine, angling himself between me and the mouth of the alley. He had decided. He was intervening. The chaos of the alley faded, but the image of the BFI agents, the sirens, and the sudden, terrifying focus of Marcello Bonetti's intervention burned behind my eyes. He had dealt with the federal agents with a casual, almost lazy authority I could not comprehend. He spoke a few quiet words to the agent in charge, and they let him walk away, as if he were dismissing them, not the other way around. I slipped back inside the restaurant, the $7,000 in cash, a heavy, toxic weight in my apron pocket. I finished the shift on autopilot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely carry a tray. The money felt like a brand. But it was not a windfall. It was not a victory. It was a single, desperate gasp of air before I went under again. My life was a ledger sheet, bleeding red ink. My mother had died 6 months ago, her heart giving out after a fight that was too long and far too expensive. Now, it was just me and my grandfather. He lived in my tiny second bedroom, a man who had once built beautiful, sleek wooden boats by hand, his fingers, which could shape mahogany and coax varnish into a mirror finish, now shook so badly he often could not hold a spoon. The hospital bills were a mountain. The late notices from the utility companies were a constant fluttering reminder of failure. The rent on our 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that was rapidly gentrifying away from us was a monster that ate me alive, 2 shifts at a time. I was supposed to be somewhere else. I had been halfway through a degree in applied statistics at UIC before my mother's final downturn. I have a thing for numbers. They stick. It is not just memory, it is order. My professors called it an excellent working memory. I call it a curse. I can tell you the 19-digit serial number on the back of the hospital bed that failed 6 times. I can recite the fluctuating interest rates on 4 different high-interest loans I was tracking. Now, I use that memory to track who ordered the ribeye medium rare and which hedge fund manager at table 6 was allergic to shellfish. It was a bitter, exhausting joke. The SUV I had seen in the alley was not a new development. It was just the horrifying confirmation of my paranoia. The threats had started 3 days ago. A text message from a blocked unknown number. Just one sentence, curiosity is expensive. Stay away from the river warehouse. I worked at a restaurant on the river. Which warehouse? All of them. I had to tell my manager, Greg, not about the text, but about the drugs. I found him in the back office, frantically trying to balance the night's receipts. his face pale and sweaty. "Greg," I said, my voice low, "those men at table 9, the ones who grabbed me, one of them dropped a baggie. In the dry storage, I faltered. "I kicked it under the flour." Greg did not look up. He just closed his eyes. "Elara," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Did the MOCD find it?" "No, I don't think they looked." "Then it never existed." He looked up at me, his eyes wide, pleading. "We are on the thinnest ice. Elara, we get shut down. We are all out of a job. You did not see anything. You understand me nothing." He was choosing ignorance. By kicking the bag, I realized I had already chosen complicity. I was the last one on the floor, wiping down the long stretch of the main bar. The MOCD agents had finished terrorizing Greg and left, but the BFI agents, the Bureau of Financial Integrity, were still there. They had commandeered Booth 12, Marcello Benetti's booth, and had spread stacks of invoices and receipts across the dark wood. I was scrubbing at a stubborn wine ring when I sensed him. He had not left. Marcello Benetti was at the far end of the bar, near the service station, nursing a tiny cup of espresso, as if the entire federal raid had been nothing more than a dull floor show. He looked completely relaxed. He did not look at me. He spoke to the empty room. It is a simple rule. His voice was a low vibration, cutting through the hum of the ice machine. "If anyone," he paused, "puts their hands on my staff while they are working on my territory, I handle it." My hand, slick with sanitizer, "Stop moving, my staff, my territory," the sheer, unadulterated arrogance of it, the $7,000, now hidden in my locker, felt like it was scorching the metal. I turned, my exhaustion making me brave or just stupid. "I don't belong to you. I am not your staff." He finally turned his head. That amusement was back, but it was sharper now. Less of a game. He took a slow sip of his espresso. "You are right." He placed the small cup in its saucer, the clink of porcelain echoing in the cavernous room. "You do not? You are absolutely right." He held my gaze. "Until the moment you need the rules, Elara, and everyone needs the rules eventually." Before I could process that, one of the BFI agents, the one with a coffee-stained tie and a sour expression, snapped his fingers at me, not as aggressively as the man from table 9, but with the same casual entitlement. "Waitress, more coffee, and we need the itemized receipts for this booth for the last 6 weeks." I was trapped. I brewed a fresh pot, my movements stiff. I walked over, my tray suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I poured the coffee, my hand steady by sheer force of will. I was invisible. I was just the help, a ghost in an apron. The agent with the tie was frustrated. "This is junk," he said to his partner, running a highlighter over a receipt. "It's all clean. The manifests are clean. The donations to the Harbor Hands Initiative are all accounted for." The other agent, younger, sharper, leaned back, crossing his arms. "You are looking at the wrong thing. It is not the manifests. It is the timing. Look at the cycles. They are not running the main route anymore. They are using Port Sable. They are pushing the switch to day 27. Port Sable, 27. The words, the numbers, hit my brain and stuck. They did not make sense, but they were there, sharp and clear. Port Sable, 27. I finished pouring and walked back to the service station. My pulse was a frantic drum against my ribs. My hand was shaking again. I grabbed a spare cocktail napkin from the stack, needing to get the numbers out of my head before I forgot. I scribbled on the cheap paper ES027. It was not just 27, it was a code, an inventory number. E-storage emergency shipment I did not know. It just felt right. They think they are hunters, but they are just sniffing at old tracks. I jumped, nearly ripping the napkin. Marcello Benetti was standing right behind me, at the alley exit, his coat on. He must have seen me writing. His eyes dropped to the napkin in my hand, then back to my face. He did not need to read it. He knew. "You see more than most," he said, and it was not a compliment. It was a flat statement of fact. He glanced at the BFI agents, who were now arguing over a calculator. "And you hear everything." He walked out into the alley. leaving me standing there, the napkin clutched in my fist. The next 48 hours were a free fall. The brief toxic relief of the $7,000 evaporated. I paid the most urgent bill for my grandfather's medication. The next morning, a crisp white envelope was slipped under my apartment door. A market rate adjustment from my landlord, a 20% rent increase, effective the 1st of next month. It was a death sentence. I cried. I sat on the floor of my kitchen with the peeling linoleum and just cried from sheer, hollowed-out frustration. Then, my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, expecting another bill reminder. It was a text from an unknown number. It was not words this time. It was a picture, a photo, taken in low light from the hallway. It was a close-up of my apartment door, the peeling blue paint, the tarnished brass 4B screwed into the wood. My heart stopped. Not just my building, not just the SUV on the street. They had been here. They had stood right where I was standing now, on the other side of this flimsy piece of wood. I spent the night with a kitchen chair wedged under the doorknob. I went to work the next day. I felt hunted. I felt transparent. I was wiping down the tables after the lunch rush, preparing for the evening. I was clearing booth 12, and I saw it. Tucked under the salt shaker, where it was impossible to miss, a business card. It was not a flimsy paper card. It was thick, heavy, cream-colored cardstock. No logos, no flashy graphics, just a name, embossed in clean, black type M, Benetti. Underneath it, a single phone number. I picked it up. On the back, written in sharp, precise, angular handwriting, were 4 words. 9 a.m., Capstone Wharf, your decision. Capstone Wharf! It was derelict, abandoned. It was all rotting piers and broken-down warehouses. My grandfather used to take me there to see the old freighters. It was empty. It was dangerous. It was a choice. Stay here. Be the invisible waitress and wait for the person who took a picture of my door to finally knock, or go to the man who owned the rules. He was right. I was out of options. I needed the rules. Capstone Wharf at 9 a.m. was a graveyard of ships. The fog was so thick it was like walking through wet wool, and the only sound was the deep, mournful groan of a distant foghorn. It was cold. The kind of damp cold that gets inside your coat and settles in your bones. I had walked the last 3 blocks, my hands jammed deep in my pockets, clutching the heavy cardstock with his name on it. I did not know if this was the stupidest decision of my life or the only one I had left. He was there, exactly at 9, emerging from the mist like he was part of it. He wore a long, dark wool coat that almost touched the ground. No bodyguards, no flashy car, not a single person with him. He was just a man, standing at the end of a rotting pier, watching the water. The silence he carried with him was louder than any entourage. I stopped 10 feet away. He did not turn. "You are early," he said, his voice flat, absorbed by the fog. "You are on time," I retorted, my own voice sounding thin and shaky. He turned slowly. His eyes were just as dark in the gray morning light. He looked at me, taking in my worn coat, my cheap sneakers, the nervous energy radiating off me. "The SUV," he said. No preamble. "No. How are you? The one that was watching your building, the one you recognized in the alley." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" "The license plate." I recited it. Just like that. The full alphanumeric string. It was one of the many useless numbers stuck in my head. Illinois plate, Queen David 449er, 8 Thomas Victor. He did not seem surprised that I had it memorized. He simply pulled out his phone. I expected him to make a call, to type a long text. Instead, his thumb moved quickly over the screen, and he hit send. I caught a glimpse of the message. It was not words. It was a single emoji, a black spade, the playing card. He put the phone away. "It will be taken care of." "What does that mean?" "It means that vehicle will no longer be a concern," he said, as if talking about a flat tire. He started to walk, not back toward the city, but deeper into the wharf, along the edge of the water. I had no choice but to follow, walking a few paces behind him. The BFI, I said, trying to make my voice strong. The agents at the restaurant, they said Port Sable and 27. He glanced back, slowing his pace so I was beside him, and the napkin I was writing on, ES027, it could be a bonded warehouse code, the ES for East Storage or an external shipment designation, and the 027 for the 27th day of the month, a cycle. He stopped walking, and he looked at me, really looked at me. The way he had at the bar when I spoke Neapolitan, the amusement was gone. This was something else. You learned that waitressing? I was in applied statistics, I said, my voice sharp. Before, the code structure is logical for inventory tracking. Marcello Benetti nodded, a single, slow gesture. It is a bonded warehouse, Section 4, but it is not my section. He started walking again. It belongs to the Leone Carovan Syndicate. I had never heard the name, but the way he said it, syndicate sounded like a different kind of poison. So, they are the ones, I whispered, who took a picture of my door. The BFI is theirs, or they have a man inside who is... They are using the Bureau to squeeze their competition and protect their own shipments. And you, Ilara, are a loose end. You heard the code, and you were seen with me. We were at the end of the wharf, standing in front of a massive, corrugated steel building. It smelled of fish and diesel. I can't go to the police, I stated, the reality of it hitting me. No, he agreed. And I cannot go home. Not for a while. So what do? I demanded, my fear finally giving way to a spike of anger. What was this for? You bring me out to this dump to tell me I am cornered? I brought you out here, he said, his voice dangerously soft, to make you an offer. I will have a car, an escort, stay with you for a few weeks, make sure you are safe, until this situation is neutralized. An escort, I said, scoffing. You mean a bodyguard? You mean I become your prisoner? He met my eyes. The fog swirled around us, isolating us from the rest of the world. I mean, he said, protection. The fee is 0. You owe me nothing. He took a step closer. But in exchange, you listen to me. When I say move, you move. When I say be quiet, you are silent. And when I say run, you run. You do not ask why, you just go. It was not a deal. It was a trade. My autonomy for my life. Before I could answer, he was moving. He slid open a protesting side door on the massive seafood warehouse. They are running product, he murmured. Let's see what it is. Wait, you want to go in there? You want to know who is hunting you, don't you? He held the door. This is where you start. I took a deep breath, the smell of brine and old ice hitting me, and slipped in after him. The warehouse was vast and cold. Stacks of wooden crates, taller than I was, stretched into the gloom. A single, weak row of lights high above barely cut the darkness. Marcello moved like a shadow. I stayed close, my senses screaming. My brain, however, clicked into a different gear. The fear was still there, but the numbers were clear. I looked at the manifest tacked to the end of each row. King salmon, halibut, crate weight 200 pounds, origin Anchorage. I moved down the row, counting. 20 crates. I passed another row. Tuna, crate weight 300 pounds. Ilara, Marcello's voice was a low warning. I ignored him. I had seen it, a discrepancy. I walked to the last row, my fingers brushing against the rough wood. The manifest was identical. King salmon, crate weight 200 pounds. But the shipping label, the one printed from the digital scale, was different. This is wrong, I whispered. What? The invoice says 200 pounds per crate, but the scale label says 250 on all of them. This whole row, that is 500 extra pounds of weight just in this one pallet. I looked at him. It is not all fish. A red dot appeared on my chest. I did not even have time to register what it was. I just saw a flash of crimson on my gray coat. Marcello did not shout. He did not pause. His hand shot out, grabbing the front of my coat, and he yanked me backward with a force that knocked the breath from my lungs. We fell We crashed behind a massive rusted steel support pillar, my head hitting the concrete floor. The sound that came next was a deafening twang. I looked up. Where I had been standing, a hole the size of my fist had been punched through a sheet metal sign that read, "Authorized personnel only." The shot had not been a bullet. It had been a bolt. No, it was a high-velocity round, and it had screamed through the air. A warning shot. If they wanted me dead, I would be dead. "Stay down," Marcello ordered. He was half on top of me, his body a shield, his eyes scanning the high rafters. He was calm. He was terrifyingly, unnaturally calm. He pulled out his phone. He did not text this time. He dialed. "Mr. Hassan," he said, his voice utterly polite. "This is Marcello Benetti. I am visiting your establishment on Pier 4. He paused, listening. "It seems you have a pest problem on your roof." I could hear the tiny, frantic voice on the other end. "Yes," Marcello said, his voice becoming a shade colder. "That is what I thought. I am here with a guest, and she has been made to feel unwelcome. I'm going to need you to shut down the lights for the entire row. Section 4. We will see ourselves out." He paused again. "Yes, Mr. Hassan, I am quite sure. You have 3 minutes." He hung up, and he looked down at me. "Are you hurt?" I was shaking, a deep, rattling tremor that started in my knees and went all the way to my teeth. But I was not crying. No. Good. The warehouse was plunged into sudden, absolute darkness. The only light was the thin gray strip from the door we had entered. "Now," he said, his voice in my ear, "we walk, not run. Walk." He pulled me to my feet. I could feel my legs wanting to give out. I needed to focus. I could not feel my fingers. I fumbled in my pocket and found a small piece of chalk I had picked up from a box earlier. As we walked, I bent down, my hand shaking, and drew on the dusty concrete floor, a series of boxes and arrows. Marcello stopped. "What are you doing?" "They are not just moving weight," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "They are splitting the shipment. The heavy crates are here, but the clean ones go to the main truck. There is a second, smaller truck for the overflow." I drew the split. It is an inefficient chain. They are using 2 vehicles when they only need 1, to keep the manifests clean. He stared at my crude diagram. In the dark, I could just make out his silhouette. He was completely still. Then he gave a single, sharp nod of approval. "Come on," he said, his hand lightly on my back. We reached the door. The fog was a welcome cloak. We slipped out, the sound of the foghorn covering our retreat. We walked for 5 minutes in total silence before we reached the street, a block from the wharf. A black sedan was waiting, its engine purring. It had not been there before. "Mark, open the back door for me." Before I got in, he reached into his own coat pocket. He pressed something cold and metal into my hand. It was a small, elegant folding knife, black like a spade. "I do not want this," I said, trying to hand it back. He closed my fingers around it. "Do not use it. Do not even think about using it." His eyes were intense. "It is just to remember, Alara, you are not empty-handed." I got into the car. He shut the door. He did not get in with me. He just tapped on the roof, and the car pulled away. As we turned the corner, I looked back. He was already gone, swallowed by the mist. I looked up, high above the wharf. A tiny red light, too steady to be a plane, hovered in the air. I heard a voice, but it was not in the car. It was in my head, a memory of a text. "The girl is with Benetti." No, it was not in my head. It was a radio, crackling to life. "Target is in the vehicle." A voice reported from a hidden speaker in the car. "She is with us." "Copy," a new voice replied. One I recognized, the driver. "What about Benetti?" "He stays. We have the girl." I was not being escorted. I was being transported. The car did not take me home. It was a black, silent, and entirely too smooth sedan that smelled of new leather and nothing else. The driver, a man whose face was a collection of hard angles, said nothing. We drove for 20 minutes, ending up at a high-rise on the Gold Coast so anonymous it was probably famous. I was escorted to a service elevator, then up 30 floors. The apartment was a sterile, glass-walled box overlooking the lake. It was beautiful, and it was a cage. "You will be safe here," the driver said. "Food is in the refrigerator. Do not leave. Someone will be in contact." He left, and I heard the lock click. I spent the first 24 hours in a state of suspended terror. I was a prisoner, but my prison had 1,000 thread-count sheets. The television was my only window, and the window was screaming. The news was a loop of the same story MOCD was launching. Operation Glass Dome, a massive, city-wide crackdown on organized crime. They were hitting social clubs, restaurants, and import businesses. The entire city was on edge, and I was in the eye of the storm. I could not stay there. My grandfather, his medication. I had to get to him. I found a back stairwell. I walked down 30 flights. I slipped out past the doorman, my heart hammering, and took a cab to my own, blessedly real, peeling paint apartment. I got my grandfather sorted. I told him the restaurant was demanding extra shifts. He nodded, his hands shaking as he held his cup. He knew I was lying, but he also knew not to ask. I was at the pharmacy on my street, waiting for his prescription, when a woman stepped up next to me, too close. Alara Dimas. I jumped. My nerves shot. She was not a cop. She was not a gangster. She was tired, wired, and smarter than everyone in the room. She was in her late 30s, with a mess of dark hair and a trench coat that had seen better decades. "You served Marcello Benetti 2 nights ago. You were there for the raid." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, turning away. "I'm Sable Quinn," she said, her voice low and rapid. "I'm an independent journalist. You work at Harbor and Hearth. You're serving them every night. Alara, look at your own receipts. Look at the corporate accounts, the Harbor Hands Initiative." The name hit me. The BFI agent, the donations to the Harbor Hands Initiative are all accounted for. "It's a shell," Sable whispered, her eyes intense. "It's a front, a charity for river workers that washes more money than the entire Chicago laundry business. They're using your restaurant as a clearinghouse. You're implicated whether you know it or not." The pharmacist called my name. I grabbed the bag, paid in cash part of Marcello's $7,000, and fled. When I got back to the glass cage, the silent driver was waiting in the lobby. He was not angry. He was just disappointed. He escorted me back up. Marcello was there. He was standing by the window, watching the city, his hands in his pockets. "You left," he stated. "My grandfather needed his medicine." I shot back, my fear eclipsed by my anger. "You can't just lock me in here. I'm not one of your things." "No," he said, turning. "You are not. You are a statistical anomaly." He did not move. "A woman named Sable Quinn approached you. It was not a question. You had me followed. I had you protected. There is a difference." He gestured to the chair. "She told you about the Harbor Hands Initiative." "She told me it's a shell," I said, not sitting. "She told me my restaurant is being used. The BFI agents said its name." "They did." He finally moved, walking to the small, sterile kitchen counter. "The BFI has an insider. He's not a federal agent. He is, for all intents and purposes, an employee of the Leon Korovin Syndicate. They are using Harbor Hands to clean their money. And yes, they are using your restaurant and a dozen others to make their dirty donations look like legitimate corporate charity." "So you're going to stop them?" "I am." He met my gaze. "But I have a problem. My people. We see muscle. We see territory. We see who is loyal and who is a rat. We do not see the numbers. Not the way they run today. Not in algorithms and transfer cycles." He took a step toward me. "You do. You saw the weight discrepancy at the wharf. You heard 27 and Port Sable, and your brain built a bridge. S027. You see the pattern? I need that." Here it was, the real offer, the job. "I'm not a criminal," I said, my voice shaking. "I am not asking you to be," he said, his voice reasonable. I'm asking you to look at a spreadsheet. I need your eyes, Alara. I need that statistical brain. I thought of the picture of my door. I thought of the 20% rent hike. I thought of my grandfather, his shaking hands. All right, I said, I'll help. But I have conditions. 2 of them. His eyebrows raised, just slightly. 1, I said, standing taller. No one innocent gets hurt. Not my grandfather, not my manager, Greg, not the other waitresses. No one. 2, I am not bait. You do not use me to draw them out. You don't put me in a room to see what happens. Ever. I am an analyst. I am not a pawn. He was silent for a long moment. He studied my face, as if he were memorizing it. Reasonable, he said, and he meant it. Agreed. He did not take me to an office. He took me, this time in his own car, to a place that looked like it had been forgotten by time. It was an old Italian bakery in a part of town that was all brick and steam vents. The front was closed, but the smell of yeast and sugar still hung in the air. We went through the back. Up a flight of rickety stairs was a room that smelled of old cigars, paper and ozone. It was not a clean room in the modern sense. It was just clean. No internet connection, no windows, just a single powerful offline computer terminal on a heavy wooden desk. This, he said, is where the Aurelio outfit does its accounting. He handed me a stack of hard drives. These are our ledgers, and these, he pointed to a second, identical stack, are the fakes we lost in a BFI seizure last month, and this is the full leaked donor list for Harbor Hands. He wants you to touch the system, he said, and find the lie. I sat down. The chair was old leather, cracked but comfortable. I plugged in the drives, and I dived. The world outside fell away. The fear, the apartment, the sirens, all of it faded. There was only the data. I was home. It was not just spreadsheets. It was a river of numbers, and I could see the currents. I could see the places where the stream was diverted, where it was artificially high, where it was unnaturally low. Marcello did not leave. He sat in a chair in the corner, in the dark, and watched me work. He did not speak. He just watched. Hours passed. 1 hour, 5. The sun must have come up. And I found it. Oh my God, I whispered. What? His voice from the corner made me jump. ES027. I pointed at the screen, at a column of wire transfer codes. It is not a warehouse. It is a routing prefix, a specific non-standard prefix, and the 27. It is not the 27th of the month. It is a 27-day cycle. Look. I pulled up a calendar. They move the money every 27 days, not monthly, not weekly. It's a prime number. It's designed to look random, to avoid a clear monthly or quarterly pattern for the BFI's real auditors. It's brilliant. Where does it go? He asked. Walking up behind me. I could feel his presence, the warmth of his body, the faint scent of wool and clean soap. It all goes here. I clicked, and a name popped up. A small, private community bank, Midshore Mutual. It is in Kingsford, Indiana. They are moving millions of dollars through a bank that probably still gives out lollipops. Marcello was quiet for a long time, looking over my shoulder. I could feel his smile without seeing it. Kingsford, Indiana, he murmured. They're very smart. He looked at the spreadsheet I had built, a beautiful, terrible thing that showed every single discrepancy, every falsified donation, every mismatched wire. We are not going to hit them, he said, his voice thoughtful. We are not going to send men with guns. That is their move. That is what Leon Korovin would do. He tapped my screen. We're going to send this, an anonymous package, to every single federal and state financial regulator between here and Indianapolis. We are not going to shoot them. We are going to bury them in paper. The plan worked. It worked too well. 2 days later, I was at Harbor and Hearth. I had to pretend my life was normal. I was in the middle of the lunch rush, my arms loaded with plates. The front door opened. It was not a customer. It was the BFI agent, the one with the coffee-stained tie. and he was with a man in a crisp white uniform from the Chicago Department of Public Health. "We have received an anonymous, credible report," the health inspector announced, his voice booming, "of a severe pest and food handling violation." Greg, my manager, ran out, his face ashen. "What? No, we were just inspected." "We are shutting you down," the BFI agent said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. He was not even pretending. He was staring directly at me, a smirk on his face, indefinitely, pending a full-scale fumigation and review. The customers started to get up. Greg looked like he was going to collapse. This was it. This was the retaliation. They could not get to Marcello. So they were burning me. The door opened again. Marcello Benetti. He was not in a coat. He was in a flawless, three-piece charcoal suit. He looked like he owned the bank, not the bakery. He breezed past the BFI agent. He ignored the health inspector. He walked straight to booth 12, his booth. He pulled out a chair, sat down, and meticulously, calmly, placed his linen napkin in his lap. The inspector, flustered, walked over. "Sir, I'm sorry. The restaurant is closed. There's a health." Marcello looked up, his expression one of polite confusion. He gave the inspector a brilliant, warm smile. Then he looked past him, at the BFI agent. "The kitchen will be open," and he said, his voice a pleasant murmur that was louder than a bomb. He looked at me, still frozen by the bar. "My people are on their way," he continued, his smile never wavering. "They are going to clean up any obstacles. You seem to have found—" He adjusted his cufflink. "Now," he said, picking up the menu, "I believe I will have the sea bass." The BFI agent's smirk was gone. He was pale. He understood, perfectly. He knew what my people meant. He knew what obstacles were. He had been challenged, and he had been dismissed in public. He grabbed the health inspector's arm. We will reassess from the outside." They turned. They left. The restaurant was silent. Greg was breathing hard. I was still holding my tray, my knuckles white. Marcello looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. He had done it again. He had protected me. He had defended his territory. And he had done it all without raising his voice. The name of the plan was Operation Iron Bridge. It sounded solid, permanent. I just felt sick. I looked at myself in the reflection of a dirty van window. I was Janice. Janice was a temp inventory clerk, which meant a cheap polyester blazer that smelled faintly of chemicals, shoes that were too tight, and my hair pulled back in a severe, headache-inducing bun. A clipboard and a laminated ID badge completed the illusion. I was terrified. Marcello was not Marcello. He was Mr. Benetti, a smiling, concerned benefactor of the Harbor Hands Initiative. His suit was a softer blue, his hair was immaculate, and his charm was a tangible, weaponized force. He was here to see where his generous corporate donation was going. And then there was Sable Quinn. She was our wild card, posing as a freelance filmmaker shooting a puff piece on the charity. Her beanie was pulled low. Her camera was heavy on her shoulder, and the tiny microphone clipped to her jacket was live. "I just find the logistics so inspiring." Sable was gushing, aiming her camera at the warehouse manager. He was a thick-set man named Kovich, and he was soaking up the attention. "Yeah, it's a hell of an operation," Kovich boasted, puffing out his chest. "We get the donations, processed and shipped out to the shelters in under 12 hours. We're very efficient." "It is incredible," Marcello said, his voice smooth, "to handle all this volume, especially given the sensitive nature of the product." Kovich said, leaning in. "You learn how to manage the manifests, the seafood. It's all about managing the weight. We get some, let's say, unusually heavy crates of salmon. We just know how to route them. It's all in the paperwork." That was it. That was the admission. Sable had it. I could feel the tension break. We had it. We were turning to leave. Marcello shaking Kovich's hand, thanking him for his time. A real pleasure, Mr. Benetti. Kovic was saying, "We appreciate the support from—" Kovic stopped. His eyes, which had been admiring Marcello's expensive watch, had now dropped to his wrist. As Marcello shook his hand, his shirt cuff had ridden up, just an inch. On the inside of his wrist, stark black against his skin, was an intricate tattoo. It was small, a stylized letter, A entwined with an olive branch, the mark of the Aurelio outfit. Kovic's smile did not just fade, it died. His hand, still gripping Marcello's, tightened like a vice. "Benetti," Kovic whispered, his face turning a mottled red. "You are that Benetti." Marcello's posture did not change. He did not pull away. He just met the man's gaze. Kovic did not yell for help. He reached back with his free hand and slammed a large red button on the wall. "Lock it down," he roared. A low, guttural alarm began to sound. A heavy, sickening grinding noise echoed through the warehouse as the massive steel roll-up doors began to slide shut, sealing us in. Red lights began to pulse, bathing the vast space in a rhythmic, terrifying crimson. "Sable," Marcello's voice was a whip crack. "The side door, now go." Sable did not hesitate. She was gone, a fleeing shadow. Marcello grabbed my arm. "Elara, run!" We did not run toward the exits. We ran deeper in, toward the maze of concrete corridors that connected the main floor to the offices. Footsteps hammered behind us. Men were shouting. A noise, a sharp crack, exploded next to my ear. I screamed. It was not a gunshot. It was something heavier. A piece of the concrete wall next to my head detonated, spraying my face with dust and stinging shrapnel. I stumbled, blind. Marcello did not slow down. He grabbed me by the front of my blazer and threw me forward, spinning to put his own body between me and the hallway. I felt the impact as more debris peppered his back. He grunted, a low, pained sound, but he kept pushing me. "Go, don't stop." We hit a dead end, a solid steel door. It was locked, a modern electronic keypad, dark and useless, and a heavy, old-fashioned key lock. Marcello turned, planting himself in the corridor, facing the men who were now rounding the corner. "Get back," he snarled at me. "The power's out," I yelled, my voice thin. "The keypad's dead, but the lock, it's just a pin tumbler." My hands were shaking, but they were moving. I reached up, my fingers fumbling with my hair, ripping out one of the heavy-duty bobby pins holding my Janus bun. I jammed it into the lock. "What are you doing?" Marcello snapped, his eyes on the approaching shadows. "I used to pick the lock on the statistics lab," I muttered, twisting the pin, feeling for the tumblers. "I need light." He did not have light. He just kicked the nearest shadow in the chest. A man flew back. I ignored the sounds, the grunts, the sickening wet thud. I focused. Click, click, click. The lock popped. I yanked the door open. "It's open!" It was a staircase, leading up. We scrambled up the narrow metal stairs, Marcello right behind me. We burst through the door at the top and onto the flat, gravel-covered roof. And we were trapped. The cold night air hit us, smelling of the river and exhaust. The city lights glittered around us, a beautiful, indifferent audience. The stairwell door we had just come through was the only way up. It opened again. It was not the men from the hallway. It was a man in a pristine suit, flanked by two others. He was Leone Korovin. He was the commander. And his men had guns. They walked toward us, slowly. We were at the edge of the roof, the 3-story drop behind us. Marcello stepped in front of me. His suit was torn. His face was bleeding from a cut over his eye, but he stood tall. He did not raise his hands. "Benetti," the commander said, his voice laced with mock surprise. "This is not your territory. You are a long way from home." "She's not part of this," Marcello said, his voice perfectly calm. He was not out of breath. He was negotiating. "She's a civilian, an employee from Harbor and Hearth." Kovic was shaking her down. "She came to me. She's not in the game." The commander laughed, a short, ugly sound. "A civilian with you. You expect me to believe that?" He raised his gun, pointing it not at Marcello, but at me. Marcello's posture changed. He did not move, but he grew. "She is my employee," he said. And the temperature on the roof dropped. He used the same voice he had used on the BFI agent. "And you are pointing a weapon at a civilian worker. On my territory. You know the rules. You harm her. You harm a restaurant worker. You break the truce." The commander hesitated. His gun wavered. This was their game, their insane, invisible rulebook. I was not going to be a bargaining chip. My eyes darted to the wall, a large red fire extinguisher. While the commander was locked on Marcello, I moved. I lunged for it. It was heavy, heavier than I expected. I ripped the pin out with my thumb. "Alara, no!" Marcello yelled. I did not aim at him. I aimed at them. I slammed the handle. A massive, blinding cloud of chemical white exploded from the nozzle, swallowing the commander and his men. They yelled, confused, choking. "Now!" I screamed. I grabbed Marcello's hand. I had seen it when we first came up. A metal fire escape bolted to the side of the building, dark and treacherous. We did not use the ladder. We scrambled over the parapet. The metal was slick, covered in a thick layer of old grease. We did not climb. We fell. We slid down the rungs, my hands burning, the oily slime coating us. We hit the bottom in a heap, landing hard in an alley filled with overflowing dumpsters. We ran. We burst out of the alley, my lungs on fire, and straight into the middle of a crowded, vibrant night market. The shock was dizzying. We were covered in filth, running for our lives, and we were suddenly surrounded by people laughing, bargaining for fish, eating noodles from paper cartons. The air smelled of spices and life. We did not stop. We pushed through the crowd, two ghosts in their colorful world, and melted into the chaos. His car was 2 blocks away. We collapsed into it, the doors locked, and the silence was deafening, broken only by my ragged gasps. I stared at the dashboard. I could not move. I was vibrating, every nerve ending screaming. I looked at Marcello. He was sitting perfectly still, staring straight ahead through the windshield, his hands on the steering wheel. No, his hands were on his knees, and the hand I could see, the one with the tattoo, was shaking. It was not a big movement. It was a fine, uncontrollable tremor, the adrenaline finally betraying his composure. He saw me looking. He slowly, deliberately, closed his shaking hand into a fist. He turned his head and looked at me. His face was a mask of dirt and drying blood. "I promised," he said, his voice a low, rough rasp. "I promised that no one would touch you." I just stared at him. He had kept his word. He started the car. We did not go to the glass tower. We did not go to my apartment. He drove, fast, cutting through the industrial district, taking alleys, doubling back. I saw a dark sedan follow us through a red light, and Marcello just smiled, a thin, feral expression. He spun the wheel, pulling a maneuver that defied physics, and we were gone. He finally pulled into a sprawling, dark scrapyard. The skeletons of crushed cars loomed around us like monuments to decay. He cut the engine. At that exact moment, the sky opened up, rain, a sudden, violent downpour that hammered the windshield. He got out. He did not say anything. He walked around to my side and opened the door. He stepped back, waiting. He used his own body to shield me from the worst of the rain as we ran, not to a building, but into one, a massive, echoing warehouse filled with the ghosts of dead machines. He slid the heavy door shut, and we were in darkness. The roar of the rain on the tin roof was the loudest sound in the world. We were both soaked, shivering, our breath fogging in the cold. He didn't turn on a light. He just stood there, a few feet away. I could hear him breathing. A security light from the yard outside sliced through a high, grimy window. A single blade of light. It cut across my face, illuminating the tracks of rain and grime on my cheeks. He spoke, his voice low, but it cut through the storm like a knife. "From now on, you stay with me. From now on, you stay with me," was not a request. It was a statement of fact, a change in the weather. The place he took me was not the glass tower. It was a small, hidden loft on West Huron, tucked above a defunct printing shop. It smelled of exposed brick, old paper, and a faint, comforting scent of dark coffee. The sound of the rain followed us, a steady, relentless drumming on the skylights, isolating us from the rest of the world. It was a safe house, but it felt like a home. There was a first aid kit in the small, clean bathroom. I found it while he was making coffee. The movements of his large frame surprisingly quiet, his wet, ruined suit jacket still on. "Sit down," I said. My voice was hoarse. He turned, the espresso machine hissing behind him. "You're bleeding." I held up the box of antiseptic wipes. He did not argue. He sat at the small, rough-hewn wooden table. The cut over his eye, from the shrapnel in the warehouse corridor, had stopped bleeding but was raw and angry. I sat on the chair opposite him, but I had to kneel on it to get high enough. The space between us shrank. I was suddenly aware of everything. The smell of the rain on his wool coat, the warmth radiating off his skin, the way his dark, wet hair curled slightly at his temple. I opened a wipe, the chemical smell sharp. This might sting. I have had worse. I'm sure. My hand was trembling, the adrenaline from the roof, from the slide, from the chase. It was all still thrumming under my skin. I put my left hand on his jaw to steady my right. His skin was rough, a day's worth of stubble, and warm. So warm, he flinched. Not from the antiseptic, but from my touch. His eyes, inches from mine, were no longer the cold, calculating eyes of the Mafia boss. The armor was gone. The man at the table, Marcello, was still. He was just watching me. His gaze was intense, unguarded, and it was undoing me. "You are shaking," he murmured. His voice was a low vibration that I felt through my hand. "It is the cold," I lied. I am still wet." His eyes dropped, just for a second, to my mouth, then they came back up. "No, you are not." I finished cleaning the cut. My hand should have moved. It should have pulled away. It did not. My thumb, of its own accord, stroked the rough line of his jaw. He did not move. He did not breathe. He just watched me. And I felt it. A change in the air. A sudden, unbearable tension that had nothing to do with Leon Korovin or the BFI. My heart was not just beating, it was swelling. It was a painful and expanding pressure in my chest. My skin was tingling, 1,000 tiny electrical currents coming alive where I was touching him, and where I was not. He raised his hand, slowly, did not grab me, did not touch my face. He gently, his fingers calloused but his touch unbelievably soft, cupped the back of my neck. His thumb found the pulse that was hammering at the base of my throat. I stopped breathing. His eyes were a question. My answer was to lean in. The kiss was... It was not what I expected. It was not a collision, it was a surrender. It was tentative for only a second, a soft pressing of lips. And then... it was a drowning. It was deep. It was desperate. It was the release of all the fear, all the adrenaline, all the terror of the last 2 weeks. And it was something else. Something hot and slow and new. My hand, the one on his jaw, slid up, my fingers tangling in his damp hair, pulling him closer. A small, broken sound came from the back of my throat. His hand on my waist was firm, pulling me off the chair and onto his lap, and I went, melting into him. It was a long, slow kiss that said everything we could not. It said, "You are safe." It said, "I see you." It said, "I am here." We broke apart, both of us breathless. Our foreheads rested together. Our wet coats, still soaked from the storm, were a cold, ridiculous barrier between us. A small, breathless laugh escaped me. "What?" he whispered, his lips brushing mine. "Our coats," I said. We are dripping on your floor." He smiled, a real smile, one that reached his eyes. "So we are." He moved, but slowly, his entire demeanor one of an almost reverent respect. He unbuttoned his suit jacket. It was ruined, muddy and torn. It fell to the floor with a heavy, wet thump. He reached for the buttons on my own flimsy polyester Janus blazer. His fingers were slow, his gaze never leaving mine, giving me every second to say no, to stop. I did not want him to stop. I put my hands on his, stopping his movement. He froze. I shook my head. A tiny movement. I unbuttoned my own blazer, my eyes locked on his. I let it fall to the floor. And then I was the one who moved. I was the one who put my hands on the front of his shirt. I was the one who pulled him back. It was a silent, clear, and absolute yes. Later, much later, the rain had softened from a roar to a whisper, a steady shushing against the glass. We were sitting on the floor, leaning against the side of the messy, unmade bed, wrapped in a single, thick wool blanket. We were dressed in clothes he must have kept here, a soft, worn t-shirt for me that smelled like him, and a gray sweatshirt for him. We were looking out the window, watching the city lights blur in the drizzle. The coffee was hot and strong. "My grandfather," I said, my voice quiet in the small space. "He used to build boats, by hand. He was building one for my mother before he was going to call it the Alara. He never finished it." Marcello was quiet, his arm a solid, warm weight around my shoulders. He did not say, "I am sorry." He just listened. "He used to say," I continued, "that you can't fight the ocean. You just have to be smarter than it. You have to respect it, or it takes you." I felt him nod, his chin brushing my hair. "I grew up at tables," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Tables like the one at Harbor and Hearth. But the conversations were different. The stakes were final. I learned to watch. I learned that the man who talks the least often has the most power." He was quiet for a moment. "I defended you at the restaurant. That was for the rules. That was for the territory. It was a message. Everyone saw." He shifted, turning slightly to look at me. "At the wharf. When that sniper was on you, when I pulled you back, that was not for the rules." He held my gaze. His eyes were so clear, so honest, it almost hurt. "I keep the rules because it is good for business. It keeps the order, but I want to keep you safe. Because you make me want to have rules for myself, a different set, for just me." I held my breath. "I am not one of them, Marcello." "I know." I can't be," I said, my voice trembling now. "I can't be with a man. I can't be part of that. If you use that kind of violence, the senseless kind, on people who are just in the way, who are innocent, I'm gone. I will walk away, and I will not come back." He did not hesitate. He did not flinch. "Reasonable," he said, the same way he had said it when I set my terms for helping him. He nodded. Agreed. And I believed him. The spell was broken by a vibration, not a sound, a phone, his phone, buzzing on the floor next to us. He sighed, but picked it up. He read the screen. A small, grim smile touched his lips. "Sable," he said. He turned the phone to me. It was a video file, a new message. It was a clean, edited clip from her hidden camera. It was Kovich, the warehouse manager, his face clear, his voice unmistakable. "Auntie, you learn how to manage the manifests. We get some, let's say, unusually heavy crates of salmon." It was perfect. It was the nail. The warmth, the softness, it did not disappear, but it was. Shelved, we were back. We looked at each other, and we were partners again. We were soldiers. We shifted, turning away from the window, and started to talk. We moved to the bed, which was already covered in some of his papers. We sat cross-legged, the wool blanket still around our shoulders, the coffee growing cold, and we started to plan, the love, the tenderness. It was still there. It twisted, it wove itself into the strategy. It became part of the battle. An hour later, we had to move. We had to get the file to a secure place. We were dressed again, in our own, still damp clothes. The loft felt too small to leave. We were at the door, the heavy, solid steel door that led to the stairs. He stopped me, his hand on my arm. "Alara." I turned. He did not kiss me. He did not say anything. He just put his arm around my shoulder, pulling me tightly against his side. It was not a gesture of passion. It was a gesture of fact, of alignment. It was calm, strong, and deeply protective. "Okay," I whispered, leaning into him for just a second. "Okay." He let me go and opened the door. The loft above the bakery became our war room. The rain had stopped, but the world outside felt muted, distant. We were in the quiet eye of the storm. My weapon was not the little black knife he had given me. It was the laptop. I worked for 2 days, fueled by adrenaline and black, syrupy espresso that Marcello made in silence. I was not just looking at the data anymore. I was mapping it. I built a visual chart, a complex, beautiful, and damning spiderweb of every transaction. It showed the 27-day cycle, the ES027 routing, the discrepancy in weights from the wharf, and the final destination at Midshore Mutual. It was a story, told in numbers, and it was irrefutable. "It has to go to someone who will understand it," I said, my eyes burning. "Someone who speaks this language." Marcello, who had been watching me, pointed to a name on a legal pad. Fincher. He's a financial columnist for the Tribune. He's not on anyone's payroll. He just hates liars. I exported the file. I encrypted it. I bounced it through 3 different anonymous email servers. I sent it. The next morning, the city woke up to a new kind of bomb. Fincher's column was not a quiet piece. It was a front-page expose. He had not just printed my chart, he had understood it. He called it the 27-day lie, and he openly questioned how the Harbor Hands Initiative, a beloved city charity, could be the central hub for what looked like a massive, multi-state money laundering operation. The MOCD, publicly shamed, announced an immediate inquiry. The retaliation was faster and more personal than I could have imagined. The next morning, I woke up in the loft to the sound of Marcello's phone buzzing. It was not a call. It was a text. He looked at it, and his entire body went rigid. The air in the room became brittle. "What?" I asked, sitting up, the wool blanket falling away. He did not speak. He just handed me the phone. It was a link to a bottom-feeder gossip site. The headline was "Exclusive Benetti's New Doll." My blood ran cold. I clicked it. It was me, a picture of me, from the restaurant, a candid shot. Me laughing with one of the other waitresses weeks ago. But the article, it was vile. It was a masterpiece of insinuation. It painted me as a gold digger, a waitress with big ambitions who had latched on to Marcello Benetti. It twisted the night of the MOCD raid, claiming I had been publicly claimed by the Don. It implied I was a prostitute, using my tips from his table to cover my service fee. I felt sick. I was erased, replaced by this doll. Marcello watched me, his face carved from ice. His fury was a palpable thing, a cold fire in the room. "I will handle this," he said, his voice a low growl I had not heard before. He was already pulling on his coat. "Handle what?" I whispered, my throat tight. "This. The man who runs this site, I will, have a conversation." I looked up at him. A conversation like the ones you grew up with, the ones where the stakes are final. He stopped, his hand on the doorknob. "No," I said, my voice shaking, but my resolve hardening. "You do that, Marcello, and you prove them right. You prove that I am just a thing you own, a piece of territory you have to defend." I stood up. "You promised me. No violence. Not for this." "This is not violence, so," he snarled. "This is correction. This is about your honor." "No," I said, walking toward him. "This is about your pride." He recoiled as if I had slapped him. "You can't fix this with a threat, Marcello," I said more gently. "It will just make it worse. You have to let me fix this. My way." He stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. The war was in his eyes, the old rules fighting the new ones. "Agreed," he finally bit out. He had kept his promise. I sat at the small wooden table. I opened my laptop. I did not have a following. I had no presence. I just opened the camera app. I hit record and streamed it to a public, anonymous video site. "My name," I started, my voice clear, "is Alara Dimas, and I am a waitress." I just talked. I did not mention Marcello. I did not mention the mafia, or the BFI, or the money. I talked about my job. "I am a service worker. We are the people you see every day, but you do not see. We are the ones who bring your coffee, who clear your plates, who listen to you, and who get harassed. We get grabbed. We get yelled at. We are told to smile when we are being threatened. It is part of the job. We are told it is part of the job." "A few weeks ago," I said, my eyes locked on the tiny green light, "I was harassed at work. A customer. He put his hands on me. He was drunk, and he was loud, and he was terrifying. And I was alone. And then a stranger, a customer at another table. He stood up. My voice wavered, but I did not stop. He did not yell. He did not hit him. He did not make a scene. He just spoke. He was quiet, and he was civilized, and he made it stop. He used the power he had to defend someone who had none. The next day," I said, "I read an article that called me a doll. It said I was his property because he defended me." I leaned in. Is this the world we live in, where a woman who is defended is automatically property, where a man who stands up for a server, quietly and with respect, is seen as a brute? I am not his doll. I am a person, and I am tired. We are all so tired. I stopped the recording. I did not know what would happen. I expected nothing. I was wrong. Within 2 hours, the clip had 1,000 views. By that night, it had 100,000. By the next day, it was everywhere. Someone, a bar owner in New York, had reposted it with the hashtag #WeAreTired, then #HeJustSpoke, then #QuietProtection. It was not about me anymore. It was about all of us. Waiters, baristas, hotel clerks, flight attendants. They started posting their own stories of harassment, of the one time a stranger stepped in. It became a movement. The gossip site that had posted the original article took it down. Their server crashed from the hate mail. My personal victory was short-lived. The MOCD, now under pressure to solve the Harbor Hands case, sent me an email, a cold, official summons. "We believe you are a person of interest, a material witness. We would like you to come in to discuss your relationship with Mr. Benetti and the Harbor Hands Initiative." "It is a trap," Marcello said, reading it over my shoulder. "I know," I said. "They are going to try and make me an informant or charge me as an accomplice." "You are not meeting them." "I am not." I agreed. I sent a polite, firm reply. "I am a full-time waitress and caregiver. I have no information to provide beyond what is publicly available." "They will not stop," he said. He was impressed. I could see it. But he was also worried. "They will try to box you in. They will try to grab you on the street." He made a call. That afternoon, a man appeared outside the print shop. He was small, unassuming, and he just read the paper for 8 hours. "His name is Silvio," Marcello said. "He is not for them. He is for you. He will make sure no one, uninvited, talks to you." The other shoe dropped a day later, Sable Quinn. She called my phone, her voice a panicked whisper. "Alara, oh God, Alara, they came to my apartment. They threw a brick through my window. There was a note." What did it say? "It just said, 'Stop, or we stop you.'" "Sable, where are you?" I am in a coffee shop. I am so scared. Marcello, who had been listening, took the phone from my hand. Sable. This is Mr. Benetti. Where are you? Stay there. Do not move. A car will be there in 5 minutes. It will not look like my car. Get in it. It will take you somewhere safe. He hung up. Where? I asked. The Alighieri, he said. It is my boutique hotel on the park. She will be in the basement. It is comfortable. A luxury bunker, I murmured. Exactly. With Sable safe, I went back to the data. I was not just a victim anymore. I was not just a witness. I was angry. That #quiet protection hashtag, it was a lie. There was nothing quiet about what was happening. I dived deeper. I was not just looking for Leone Coravin. I was looking for their partners. And I found them. Marcello, I called out, what is donor matching? He came over, a cup of coffee in his hand. It is a rich person's game, and I said, my fingers flying. Look, Harbor Hands gets a dirty donation, say $100,000 from this shell company. I pointed. They get a clean tax receipt, but then another company, a legitimate, high-profile tech firm, they donate $100,000. It is a swap, he said, his eyes widening. He saw it. It is a wash, I corrected. The dirty money comes in, and the tech company's donation is just rerouted. It is a way to trade clean money for dirty, all under the umbrella of corporate matching. It is beautiful. Who is the linchpin, he asked, his voice low. They all use the same security firm, I said, highlighting the name. For their buildings, for their events, all of them. Crown Pike, private security, all ex-military, all of them. Crown Pike, Marcello said, and his voice was cold. That is not Leone Coravin. That is their muscle. That is the armor they wear. He knew he had to move. He called a meeting. Not in a restaurant, not in a club. He called them to the bakery. They came at 2 a.m, 4 of them, old men in old coats, who smelled of cigars and suspicion. They were his capos, his lieutenants. They saw me at the table, under the single hanging light, my laptop glowing. They looked at me like I was a piece of furniture. Marcello, one of them, the oldest, said, "This is not a place for women." "This woman," Marcello said, walking over, "is the only reason we are not at war." "We are hearing things," the old man said, ignoring him. "We are hearing you are soft because of this." He gestured at me, at my t-shirt and my laptop, because of a girl, Leone Coravin. They laugh at you. Marcello looked at them. He was not angry. He was disappointed. He walked over to me. He put his hand on my shoulder. The gesture was warm, solid, and utterly defiant. "Gentlemen, Van," he said, his voice quiet, but it filled the room. "Where we are soft, that is where we are now armored." He pointed at my screen. "This is our armor. This is our weapon, this." He pointed at the Crown Pike logo. "Is their weakness. You want to fight, you want to prove we are not soft." He smiled. "Good, we will. We are not going to hit their trucks. We are not going to break their legs. We are going to seize their bank accounts. We are going to hit Midshore Mutual with so many federal complaints they will freeze every asset Leone Coravin has. We are going to bury them in numbers. We will do it her way." He looked at me, and his eyes were proud, because her way is permanent. The old men were silent. The meeting broke. As they were leaving, my phone buzzed. It was an encrypted text from Sable. "I just got a call, in the bunker, an accountant, from Midshore Mutual. He says he has the real books. He wants protection. He wants to talk." The network was not just cracking, it was shattering. The Linden House Museum was a cathedral of glass and steel, and the Harbor Hands Initiative Gala was its high mass. The elite of Chicago were there, dripping in jewels and false sincerity, drinking champagne that cost more than my monthly rent. I had never felt more like an imposter. I was in a classic black dress, A simple, floor-length column of silk that Marcello had procured. It was elegant, timeless, and it felt like a costume. My hair was up, and the small, delicate earrings he had given me felt heavy on my lobes. Marcello was a ghost from another era. He wore a single-breasted tuxedo that was pure 1960s, a cut so clean and sharp it was almost brutal. He was not just handsome, he was an event. He was defending by presence. His own words. We were the most watched couple in the room, the infamous boss and his doll. They whispered, "Let them." "You look," he had said, back at the loft, his voice low. He did not finish, he just offered me his arm. Our target was not the money, it was the truth. The accountant from Midshore Mutual, now safely in Sable's bunker, had told us everything. The real books were not on a server. They were on an encrypted, air-gapped hard drive, and tonight, that hard drive was on display. Harbor Hands was honoring its biggest anonymous donor. The centerpiece of the exhibit was a glass case, and inside it, sitting on a velvet pillow, was a laughably small, sleek, black hard drive. The case was wired, but the safe it was connected to was built into the wall, a state-of-the-art biometric model. The treasurer, a man named Price, is the only one with the code, Marcello murmured, his hand a warm, solid weight on the small of my back. He was guiding me through the crowd, all smiles. He's paranoid. He changes it daily. "How do we get it?" I whispered, smiling at a passing city councilman. "We do not," Marcello said, his eyes scanning the room. "You do." We found Price near the champagne fountain. He was a small, nervous man, clutching his wine glass like a life raft. Marcello, a vision of charm, stepped forward to greet the foundation's president, a woman draped in diamonds, deliberately positioning himself to my left. It was a calculated move. It left me with a perfect view of Price. "Such a wonderful cause," Marcello was saying, his voice a smooth, captivating baritone. He was a shield. He was my cover. I watched Price. He was texting, his face pale. He took a nervous sip of wine. He was talking to a security guard who pointed to the display. Price sighed, annoyed, and walked over to the safe built into the wall. He had to enter the code to verify the system before the main auction. He held his wine glass in his left hand. He went to type with his right. He looked over his shoulder, saw me, and dismissed me. I was just a woman in a black dress, looking bored, gazing out the window. I was not looking out the window. I was looking at the smooth, convex curve of his wine glass. He typed. It was a long sequence, 12 digits. His fingers were a blur, but the reflection in the polished Bordeaux was not. It was inverted, distorted, but it was there. The light from the exhibit behind him caught the oily fingerprints on the glass, and for a split second, I saw the numbers dance. My brain did it. The thing it does, it captured the sequence. It did not just memorize it, it tattooed it on my mind. 9, 1, 4, 4, 2, 0, 1, 8, 6, 6, 7, 1. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. I turned to Marcello. He was still deep in conversation, but his eyes, for a fraction of a second, met mine. I gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. He smiled at the foundation president. "You will have to excuse me," he said. "It seems my associate has spotted an old friend." He was guiding me away, toward the exit, when the world ended. A man, one I vaguely recognized from the bakery, stepped in front of us. He was one of Marcello's Dario Fen. He was pale, sweating. "Boss," he said, his voice a tremor, there is a problem. In the coat check." Marcello stopped. He looked at Dario. He did not look at his face. He looked at his hands. Dario's right hand was behind his back. "Dario," Marcello said, his voice dangerously soft, "what have you done?" Dario's eyes were wide with terror. He was not a traitor. He was a hostage. Someone else was behind this. And then the lights went out. The room was plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. A woman screamed. There was a sound like a high-powered hammer, and the glass wall of the museum, the one overlooking the city, exploded inward. Shards of safety glass rained down on us. I did not have time to scream. Marcello moved. He did not run. He did not flinch. He wrapped himself around me, his back to the imploding wall, his body a solid, immovable shield. I felt the thud as pieces of glass and frame hammered his tuxedo. He did not make a sound. He just held me, his face buried in my hair. "Marcello," I whispered, my voice shaking. Men were shouting. Not museum security, they were hard voices. "Benetti, we know you are in here." It was Leon Coravin. It was Crown Pike. Dario had been forced to let them in. "Trust me," I whispered into his chest. My voice was suddenly clear, my panic gone. "I know this building. I worked a catering gig here. 2 weeks, trust me." I grabbed his hand. He did not question me. I pulled. I did not go to the main exits. I went left, toward the staff entrance for the kitchen. It was a heavy, unmarked door. I found the push bar in the dark. We spilled into a brightly lit stainless steel corridor. The chaos of the gala was a dull roar behind us. "Where?" he said, his voice calm, brushing glass from his shoulder. "Archive room," I said, already moving. "It is 1 floor down. They would have moved the display. The safest place." "The service elevator," he said, pointing. "Too slow," I said. "This way." I knew the back stairs, the ones for the bussers. We were there in 30 seconds. The archive room was a windowless, climate-controlled vault, and the safe was there, standing open, the hard drive gone. They had moved it for safety when the power cut. "No," I breathed. Marcello was not looking at the safe. He was looking at the desk. On the archivist's desk, next to a stack of books, was the hard drive, and next to it, a thin, black, leather-bound notebook. The archivist must have been logging it when the attack began and had fled. Marcello grabbed the hard drive. I grabbed the notebook. I flipped it open. The first page, written in the same, precise, angular handwriting as the note on his business card, ES 027, Kingsford, Crown Pike. It was his ledger. The door to the archive burst open. We were trapped in the corridor. 2 of Crown Pike's men, dressed in black tactical gear, raised their weapons. "Nowhere to run, Benetti," one of them said. Marcello stepped in front of me. He raised his hands, a gesture of classic surrender. "You are right, it is over." The men advanced, splitting, one going left, one going right, to flank us. It was a textbook move. "Now," Marcello whispered to me. I did not hesitate. I grabbed the heavy CO2 fire extinguisher from the wall. Marcello had feigned surrender to draw them in, to make them separate. As they moved past a concrete support pillar, I unleashed a massive, deafening cloud of white. One man screamed, blinded. The other fired his weapon, the shot going wild, echoing in the narrow space. Marcello was already moving. He was not a brawler. He was a fighter. He moved like a dancer, using the first man's blind panic to spin him into the second. It was a blur of black and white, a tango of violence. In 5 seconds, it was over. 2 men on the ground and us, running. We hit the stairs again. Up. Up was the only way. We burst onto the roof. The same roof, the one from the warehouse. No, this was the museum roof, the gala's sky terrace. It was empty. The city was a glittering carpet below us. And then I heard it, a sound I never wanted to hear again, the whump, whump, whump of a helicopter. A black, unmarked helicopter, Crown Pike, rose from the other side of the building. Its searchlight hit us, a blinding, white circle. We were pinned. "The skylight," Marcello yelled, pulling me. We scrambled, half falling, down a maintenance ladder and onto a lower roof. A massive, domed glass skylight was below us, illuminating the 20th century art exhibit. Marcello did not pause. He did not check if it was safe. He put his elbow through one of the panes, shattering it, and dropped into the darkness below. I followed. We landed hard on a priceless abstract sculpture. We were in a dark gallery. silent. "This way," I whispered. No. A figure stepped out from behind a statue. It was Dario Fenn, and this time, he was not scared, he was angry. And his hand was not empty. He was holding a gun, and it was pointed right at Marcello. "You," Dario spat, his voice breaking, "you and your girl. You brought this down on us, the old men. They were right. You are soft." Marcello did not look at the gun. He looked at Dario's face. He was not angry. He was sad. "Dario," he said, his voice a low, quiet command. He stepped, just slightly, to the left, blocking me, always blocking me. "Put the weapon down." "She is the one," Dario yelled, his hand shaking, the gun waving between us. She is the reason you broke the rules. You brought a civilian in." "She is not a civilian," Marcello said, his voice flat, but with a steel I had never heard. "She is with me, now. Let her go. Dario, let her walk out of this room. You and I will finish this." He was doing it again. He was offering himself. He was quietly defending me to a man who was about to kill him. Dario was crying now, his face a mask of sweat and tears. He was a man in a trap. He raised the gun, his hand shaking so badly he could barely aim. I cannot. The sound of sirens, sudden and deafening, filled the air from the street below. Red and blue lights washed the gallery in a phantom disco. The police, someone at the gala had called them. Dario's face, caught in the flashing lights, was a mask of pure panic. He was trapped by Marcello, by the police. This was my chance. I did not scream. I did not run. Marcello had given me the opening. I took it. I grabbed Marcello's arm. "Service elevator," I hissed. "The one for the art. It is shielded." He did not look at Dario. He just turned his back on the gun and came with me. We ran. Dario did not shoot. He just stood there, broken, as the sound of police radios echoed from the stairs. We hit the call button. The steel doors opened. We stepped in. The doors closed, sealing us in a box of brushed steel. I collapsed against the wall, my legs finally giving out. The hard drive was clutched in Marcello's hand. The notebook was in mine. We were safe. We had escaped. But I looked at his face, illuminated in the harsh elevator light. His jaw was set, his eyes dark. We had won the battle, but the final, terrible act, it was still to come. We did not go back to the loft. We went, of all places, to the old Italian bakery. The smell of yeast and sugar felt like a cruel joke, a memory of a normal life that was now gone. While Marcello made calls, his voice a low, hard vibration from the back office, I plugged in the drive. I did not need the notebook. I had the hard drive. I had their system. And it was all there. My analysis had been right, but I had underestimated the scale. The 27-day cycle was not just for digital transfers to Midshore Mutual. That was just the cleanup. The real operation, the ES027 route, was physical. The port at Kingsford, Indiana, was not just the bank's location. It was a port, a real, functioning shipping hub on the lake. "Marcello," I said, my voice flat. I was too tired to be shocked. He came in, his face grim. He had heard from his men. Dario Fenn had vanished, swallowed by the Leon Korovin machine. "What is it?" he asked. "It is not just cash," I said, pointing to the screen. "It is metals, precious metals. They are moving gold bullion, platinum, things that hold value, that are untraceable, that are not just numbers. They use the Harbor Hands charity shipments, food, medical supplies, to justify the weight on the manifests. They are not just overweight with salmon. They are overweight with gold." I pointed to the schedule, the 27-day cycle. It is not just a bank transfer. It is a shipment, the next one. It is tomorrow at dawn. Before he could process this, my phone, which I had left charging on the desk, lit up. It was an encrypted text from Sable Quinn. "It's out. Check the wire. I pulled up the feed. It was not just Fincher's column this time. It was Sable. She had taken the accountant's testimony, my data, and the recording of Kovich from the warehouse, and she had given it to everyone. Reuters, the Associated Press. The headline was, Mid-Shore Mutual Freezes Assets Amid Federal Probe. The first part of Marcello's pincer move, my pincer move, had struck. The legal financial attack was underway. The Leona Korovin syndicate was bleeding money, their accounts frozen, their partners in Kingsford running for cover. They were wounded, and now they were desperate. The MOCD was also desperate. My personal email pinged, a new message from a new agent. Miss Demas, it read. We are aware of the new information released by Miss Quinn. We are aware of the events at the Linden House. We are prepared to offer you full and permanent relocation and protection under the Federal Witness Program. You have 24 hours to accept. A car will be waiting. It was a life raft, a way out, a new name, a new city, a life. Without him. I looked at Marcello, and he was reading it over my shoulder. I could feel the tension in his body, the war he was fighting with himself. He wanted to tell me to take it. He wanted to lock me in a room. He wanted me to be safe. He stepped back. He gave me space. It is your decision, Ilara, he said, his voice raw. Completely, if you take it, I will stand outside that car. I will watch it drive away, and I will be there. He was giving me permission to leave him. He was doing what the men he grew up with would never do. He was letting go. I looked at the email, at the promise of a quiet life. Then I looked at the man who had shown me what quiet, real protection actually meant. If we run, I said, my voice as hard as his, they win. If I leave, they win. We are not running. I hit delete. I turned to him. The space between us was electric, a screaming void. The final battle was tomorrow. We had one night. I did not walk. I crossed the room in 2 steps. I put my hands on his chest, fisting his shirt. Ilara, he whispered. Shut up, I said. The kiss was not like the one in the loft. That had been soft, a discovery. This was a claim. It was a collision. It was desperate and angry and terrified and certain, all at once. It was a promise of before and a plea for after. My hands went from his chest to his hair, pulling him down, and his arms wrapped around me, lifting me, crushing me against him. It was all teeth and breath and the sharp, shared understanding that this was the last moment of peace we would ever have. We broke apart, our foreheads pressed together, both of us breathing hard. My hands were shaking. He took them, his own grip a steel band, our fingers lacing together, a perfect tight fit. Okay, he breathed, his eyes closed. Okay. His phone rang. The sound was a violation. He did not let go of my hands. He just opened his eyes, looked at the screen. His face hardened. It is Dario. He put it on speaker, his thumb, still holding my hand. Benetti. Dario's voice was a ragged gasp, full of false bravado. Dario. You cost me everything. You and that bitch. You think you are smart. You are not. What do you want? Marcello's voice was ice. Peace, Dario spat, and the lie was so thin it was transparent. I want a trade. Tomorrow, noon, the Gray Bridge, South Deering, you know the one. A trade for what? Her, Dario said. You give her to us. You give us the girl. And we call it even. We give you peace. Marcello's hand tightened on mine until it hurt. You are a fool, Dario, Marcello said, his voice flat. Maybe, Dario screamed, his voice breaking, but I have what they want, and they want her, noon, the bridge, or we start. We start taking things, starting with that old man, the one who builds boats. My blood stopped. My grandfather. Marcello hung up. I was not breathing. I was a void. He He is lying, Wanawani Marcello said, turning me, forcing me to look at him. He does not want you. He wants me. He wants me to bring you, to show you. And he wants to kill me in front of you. That is his move. It is a trap. I know, I said, my voice a dead thing. I know, and he mentioned my grandfather. He will not touch him, Marcello said, a vow so cold and absolute it chilled the room. Silvio is already there. My men are everywhere. He's safe. This is not about your grandfather. It is about us. It is about the bridge. So we do not go, I said. We have to go, he said. This is it. This is the end. We hit them at the port at dawn. We take their gold, and then we go to the bridge. No, I said, the strategist, the numbers girl. My brain was finally working again, the red fog of rage clearing. No, that is your way, Marcello. That is the old way. You hit them. They hit you. We do my way. We do the way that ends this. He looked at me. What are you saying? We are not going to the port at dawn, I said, my voice gaining strength. We are going to let them think they are safe. We are going to let them think their shipment is fine. And the bridge? We are going to the bridge, I said, and my smile was not a nice one. But we are not bringing me as a hostage. We are going to use that charity. We are going to use the Harbor Hands initiative. For real. I explained. He listened. He was reluctant. It was not his style. It was too soft. It is not soft, I argued. It is smart. He wants me. He gets me. He wants to kill you. He can try, but he is expecting a mafia boss. He's not expecting a food drive. He finally, reluctantly, agreed. He went to a back closet and pulled out a simple, thin vest. It was Kevlar. He started strapping it on under his shirt, under his suit jacket. We stood there, in the early morning light, the bakery smelling of old bread. We were two soldiers, dressed for two different kinds of war. He was in his suit, his armor hidden. I was in my jeans, my armor, my mind. He looked at me, his face sober, his eyes electric. He had kept his promise. He was not using violence. He was using my plan. The convoy is ready, he said. 3 trucks, all full. Real food for the real shelters. And the lead truck has your surprise in it. He did not like it, but he trusted me. We walked out. The sun was not yet up. The wind from the lake was bitter, cold. The 3 large white box trucks, all with Harbor Hands Initiative, a brighter Chicago painted on the side, were idling. Marcello opened the door to the lead truck for me. I climbed in. I was not driving. I was the passenger, the general. A headset with an internal comms link was on the seat. I put it on. Check, I said. Check, the driver, one of his men, said. Check. Marcello's voice came over the comm. He was in the second truck. The convoy started to move. We rolled out onto the dark, empty streets of Chicago. We were heading south, to the Gray Bridge, to South Deering. My heart was not a drum. It was a metronome. It was counting. It was counting down the street signs. It was counting down the miles. It was counting down to the end. The Gray Bridge was a skeleton of rust and iron, cutting through the bleak, industrial landscape of South Deering. The wind howled, carrying the metallic smell of the nearby factories. It was noon, and they were all there. Dario Fenn was at the center of the bridge, flanked by at least 10 men from Leone Corrivan and Crown Pike. They were not just muscle, they were tactical, dressed in black, with the arrogant stillness of soldiers. They had formed a semicircle, a classic kill box. Our 3 white Harbor Hands trucks stopped, 100 feet from the blockade. I watched on the small monitor in my truck, the feed from a micro camera on Marcello's lapel. My heart was that steady. Cold metronome. I am going out. Marcello's voice came over my headset, calm and low. Marcello, I whispered, my hand gripping the microphone. We kept our promise. Alara, he said, no guns first. The door of the second truck opened. He stepped out, alone. He wore the same charcoal suit he had worn at the restaurant. his hands in his pockets. He walked, not like a man going to his execution, but like a man on his way to a meeting. He stopped, 50 feet from Dario, in the center of the kill zone. Then, he slowly, deliberately, took his hands from his pockets and held them out, palms up, wide. He was a gentleman, standing before a pack of wolves. "Dario," he called, his voice carrying on the wind. "You wanted to talk. I am here." Dario laughed, a high, broken sound. "You came. You really came, and you brought the bitch." He was screaming now, unhinged. "Where is she? Give her to me. Give her to me, and I will let you. I will let you watch." This was it, my cue. I was in the third truck, not the first. I had a portable speaker system, hardwired to my laptop. I did not have a gun. I had a recording. I hit the play button. It was not my voice that boomed out over the bridge. It was Dario's. "So, the bank, mid-shore, they will handle the transfer. But you, Crown Pike, you have to guarantee the physical shipment, the bullion." The sound echoed off the steel girders. It was the conference call I had found on the hard drive. Dario Fenn, negotiating with a terrified accountant from Mid-Shore Mutual and a cold-blooded operator from Crown Pike. It was the entire conspiracy, laid bare in his own frantic voice. Dario froze, his face, a mask of rage, collapsed into confusion, and then pure, naked terror. The men from Leon Korovin looked at him, their expressions turning from suspicion to cold fury. He had not just failed, he had been recorded. He had broken their cardinal rule. You, he stammered, looking around. "It is over, Dario," Marcello said, his hands still wide. And then the final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. A black sedan, the one I knew so well, screeched to a halt at the north end of the bridge. The BFI, the corrupt agent, the one with the coffee-stained tie, stepped out, his gun drawn. "Benetti," he yelled, a triumphant smirk on his face. "You are under arrest for conspiracy." He was here to arrest Marcello, to take him off the board, to clean up Leon Korovin's mess. He took 3 steps and stopped. From the south end of the bridge, a convoy of dark, official MOCD vehicles, sirens now blazing to life, roared onto the scene. They were not the BFI, they were the real law. They spilled out, tactical vests, real authority. "BFI stand down," the MOCD commander yelled. "This is a federal crime scene." Sable Quinn. She had not just sent the MOCD, she had sent them now. She had timed her data dump, the full, unencrypted hard drive, to hit their desks at the exact moment this standoff began. The BFI agent looked at the MOCD. The MOCD looked at him. The Leon Korovin men looked at everyone. It was a perfect, chaotic stalemate. Dario saw his opening. He saw me. I had stepped out of the third truck, my hands in my pockets, to watch. He saw me, the source of his ruin. "You!" he screamed. He raised his pistol, his hand shaking, his target no longer Marcello but me. He was 50 feet away. Too far for a shaking hand, I did not care. Marcello did not dive. He did not yell. He moved. He had been standing, palms out, a perfect gentleman. In the second it took Dario to aim, Marcello closed the distance. He lunged, not at Dario but at me. He hit me like a linebacker, his arms wrapping around me, twisting his body in midair to take the shot. I heard the crack of the gun. I heard Marcello grunt, a sharp, pained sound that ripped through my heart. We hit the asphalt, me underneath him, his dead weight a sudden, terrifying burden. "Marcello!" I screamed, struggling. He pushed himself up, his face pale, but his eyes were on fire. He was standing. He had a tear in the shoulder of his suit. A dark, wet stain was already spreading, a graze, a centimeter closer, and it would have been his neck. He had stood firm. Dario was fumbling, trying to reload, his men abandoning him, backing away, realizing their own boss was now the target of a federal investigation. I stood up, my knees shaking. I walked past Marcello. I walked toward my truck. I pulled the small, portable microphone and speaker from the front seat. I walked to the center of the bridge, my legs wobbly, but my voice was clear. "My name is Alara Dimas," I said, and the speaker amplified my words, carrying them over the wind, over the sirens. Dario stopped. The cops stopped. Even Marcello, clutching his shoulder, stopped. "I am the waitress you ignored," I said, my voice ringing with a cold, hard clarity. "I am the one who cleared your plates and brought your coffee. I am the one you harassed. I am the one you called a doll." I looked at Dario, at the BFI agent, at all of them. Today, I am serving the truth. Marcello, his face a mask of pain and pride, walked, not to me, but to the first truck in the convoy. He did not pull a gun. He did not make a threat. He reached up, grabbed the heavy canvas tarp, and pulled. It ripped away. The truck was not full of gold. It was not full of guns. It was full of real, terrified young volunteers in Harbor Hands t-shirts and boxes, not crates, document boxes. "These," Marcello called out, his voice rough, "are the real documents, the ones the accountant from Midshore Mutual provided, the real books, and these," he pointed to the volunteers, "are the witnesses, the ones from the charity who were forced to sign false manifests. They are all here, MOCD, they are all here to make a statement." It was the final move, my move, the legal, lawful, and undeniable checkmate. Dario did not even run. He just collapsed. He dropped the gun. He was finished. The Leon Korovan men were already in their cars, retreating. Their accounts were frozen. Their shipments were gone. Their muscle was exposed. They were ghosts. The MOCD commander, his face a mask of grim satisfaction, walked past the BFI agent. "Cuff him," he said to his men, pointing at the corrupt agent. Sable Quinn, camera on her shoulder, materialized from behind the MOCD van. She got the whole thing. The corrupt agent in cuffs, in front of the world. The war was over. The bridge was a mess of flashing lights and shouting men. Marcello, his face pale, was leaning against the truck. His duty done, he was fading back. He was letting the law, the real law, clean up the mess. He was going to disappear back into the shadows, his promise to me fulfilled. I walked over to him. Through the chaos, the medics were trying to get to him, but he waved them off. I stood in front of him. He looked at me, his eyes dark with pain and exhaustion. "You are bleeding," I said, my voice soft. "It is a scratch," he said. I put my hand on his, the one that was not clutching his shoulder. I laced my fingers through his. "We kept our promise," I whispered. He looked down at our hands. A small, pained smile touched his lips. We did. A kind of peace, a quiet, impossible calm settled over us, a tiny, warm bubble in the middle of the sirens. Weeks later, the snow was falling, the first real wet snow of the Chicago winter. Harbor and Hearth was warm, the lights low. They were having a jazz night, a fundraiser for a new service workers relief fund. I was not in my apron, I was just me. He was there, in booth 12, his corner. He was quiet, his shoulder healed, his eyes warm. He was just watching the band. I walked over, and he looked up, and the smile that crossed his face was something I had never seen in public. It was just for me. I placed a small, white receipt on his table. He picked it up. On it, I had written $0, 0 cents, paid in full. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. I smiled. "You do not owe anyone," I said, "unless you want to." He chuckled, a low, soft sound. He looked at the check, then at me. He raised his glass. "Grazie, picker," he murmured. "Thank you, little one." It was a thanks. It was a promise. We left together. The snow was coming down harder, the flakes fat and soft, hushing the city. He put his arm around my shoulder, and as we walked out onto the street, he shifted, his body always, moving to block the wind. I opened a small studio above a gym in my neighborhood. I teach risk management for the hospitality industry. I teach waitresses and baristas how to de-escalate. I teach them how to be aware. I teach them what to do when a hand grabs their wrist. The classes are free. They are funded by an anonymous donation from a logistics and import company. Sometimes, my students ask me why I do it, why I care so much. I just smile, because someone once stood up for us. I tell them, he did it the right way. Thank you for listening to this story. I am so grateful you spent this time with me. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. And if you enjoyed this, please consider hitting that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.